A special treat here. We have going to be talking with one of the smartest people walking the planet here in America today. His name is Winston Elliott. He's a big hero of mine. Winston and I share affection for the man that they call the Sage of Mecosta, Michigan, Russell Kirk. Now, Russell Kirk was called by Ronald Reagan the prophet of American conservatism. And I discovered Russell Kirk after working on political campaigns for a few years, and when I made that switch from being a man of action to a man of thought, Russell Kirk was very much a mentor. Now, Russell died in 1994, but Russell's books have really experienced. I mean, he wrote some 30-plus books from his home in Mecosta, Michigan. He actually was originally born in Plymouth, Michigan. And Russell, in 1953, wrote the book The Conservative Mind, which was a book that really brought together 200 years of the most important conservative thinking from Edmund Burke, let's say, great-grandfather of modern conservatism, all the way through Alexis de Tocqueville and John Adams and Santana and Irving Babbitt, all the way to T.S. Eliot and the great thinking done by the Christian humanists, along with so many, many others. But in 1953, when Russell Kirk wrote this book, it landed like a bombshell on the scene because essentially the conservative movement in many ways had atrophied, and a lot of folks didn't really understand what the heck was an alternative to liberalism and this new socialism that had failed so miserably in the first part of the 20th century. And so Russell really brought it all together. And what you'll find is when you move out of the activist community that is often dealing with the surface level talking points du jour of the political din that is so loud, and all the screamers and all the things that we fight over on a daily basis, that when you look for the things, and there's so many people out there that are looking for something so much deeper than what we typically encounter, and even the right-wing media today. There's so many of us that think Fox News Channel does not go deep enough into the issues, but is always just kind of swimming on the top. What you find is that there's this great wealth of knowledge, this great store of wisdom that's out there. And one of the best places to go for it is a blog called theimaginateconservative.org. Imaginateconservative.org is published by our next guest, Winston Elliott, who I'm very indebted to, because Winston was one of those guys that not only do I think is one of the smartest guys walking the planet, but also he thought enough of my writing to allow me to be a contributor to his blog. So is Winston with us?
I believe I'm with you.
Welcome, Winston. What a pleasure it is to have you on the show. This is the first time that we've actually ever spoken to one another, so it's a real treat for me to be able to visit with you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. We do live in an unusual world where we actually spend more time debating and conversing with our friends in our electronic communities quite often than we do face-to-face over a good drink and a pipe in our own living rooms or studies. So we have to make do. It'd be better to be there with you, but we're still connected.
That's right. Now, you're actually calling in from Houston, where you serve not only as the publisher of the imaginateconservative.org, that's imaginateconservative.org, but also you are the president of the Center for the American Republic. And so you're right there, not only doing the pre-political stuff where you're helping uncover these great timeless writers, this wonderful store of wisdom, but you're also, they're teaching the emerging generation these timeless things that are applicable to today's political problems. Isn't that right?
Yes, we've had the privilege here through the Center for the American Republic to introduce what we believe is a broad spectrum of ideas, primarily within the cultural conservative context, to educators, to college students, to business people. And so I've had the opportunity as president of the center for the last 20 years to put on programs both here in Houston and across the country, covering everything from politics to economics, philosophy, art, literature, music, and to help good folks who want to broaden their understanding of conservative principles, to broaden them both in terms of their knowledge of the history of the movement, but also to understand that the movement goes beyond just politics and economics and has a broad cultural basis as well, which is something that Dr. Kirk always emphasized, that to be a conservative is not to be simply someone who votes the right way in elections or who is for free markets or the private enterprise system, but is for someone who wants to preserve the best of our Western heritage in all of its cultural, moral, and aesthetic traditions.
That's exactly right. You think about it. What Russell did in that book, in 1953 book, The Conservative Mind, as well as his subsequent 30-plus books, was he really answered the question, what is it that conservatism is trying to conserve? And when you think about that, although conservatives are not necessarily comfortable with abstractions, the ideas that Russell teased out of those eternal verities were so very, very critical. And one of the things that he makes such an incredibly eloquent argument for is that man is more than merely a consuming and producing animal. That Russell, in many ways, brought to light. He brought forward Wilhelm Röpke, and really was a champion for Röpke's ideas that explained a humane economy, that mere free market capitalism cares nothing for the social order, and the conservative is interested in really. Just as an environmentalist might say they're trying to preserve our biological ecology, the conservative is interested in preserving and improving our social ecology. In other words, what does it take for man to flourish at its highest? These were the ideas with which Russell Kirk was concerned. And, of course, Russell also wrote that great textbook on economics, so he was not someone who was not unfamiliar with economics, but he made it clear that we can't just merely be homo economicus. We cannot just be economic man, but rather what really helps man reach his fulfillment. And I love what you wrote on my Facebook wall yesterday, that we can earn a living, but we can also make a life. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think we do have a marvelous opportunity in a system that allows us to be prosperous, to use the time and resources that are available because of our whatever level of economic prosperity we have, to seek the true, the good, and the beautiful. These are the highest things, and these are the things that we can make at the center of our life, and to be those things that we seek beyond all things. So that when we look at economics, we say this is a very important subset of the life of the human person. But we also have to remember that it's not the end. That whether it be we learn in our practical skills for work, or whether what we learn in terms of art and music and books and things that we enjoy, we are seeking these higher things as the end. And the other things are hopefully something that we do ethically and with our character, but we contribute to them as tools. So that you say that the free market is a good thing. Yes, because it's effective, because it does allow us to progress and to be successful. Mm-hmm. But the question is, it brings us this economic freedom for what? Freedom for what? What is the purpose of life? What is it that makes life worth living? We don't want to be one of those guys who at the end of life has on their headstone, well, he sold more insurance than anybody else. Now, selling insurance is a service that actually is very valuable mm-hmm. To helping people in their material lives. I'm for it. But we would hope that whether it's selling insurance or fixing cars or writing blogs or teaching, that all of these things are part of our higher calling. And Dr. Kirk always made quite clear that whether it's whatever we did in our day-to-day lives was a part of our greater call to making a life that is worthwhile.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And, of course, Russell Kirk made this point so eloquently throughout his life that perhaps one of the most important roles that conservatives can offer to this postmodern society is to help the working man feel comfortable in with his life. So often what we see is this attitude that the man who dies with the most toys wins. And yet what we find is that the more people spend in the acquisition of goods, and when they spend all their time being merely producing and consuming animals, that they really miss what gives life that sweet marrow of life. They miss the what he would call the permanent things or the humane things that really make life worth living. A lot of folks don't understand, what are the permanent things? Well, the permanent things are those things that are ratified by our entire human experience. In other words, in man's long climb from the swamp to the stars, what are the things that are really ideal? What are the best things? And so our good friend James Person wrote a biography on Kirk, and he mentioned how there was this college professor, Thomas Howard, who used to give his literature class an exercise in the permanent things by providing a list of words: majesty, magnanimity, valor, courtesy, grace, charity, virginity, the sublime, nobility, splendor, ceremony, taboo, mystery, purity. And inevitably, his students wouldn't know what to do with it. What has happened in the 20th century particularly is we've gotten rid of the true liberal arts education. We've gotten rid of what enables people to really reach their highest fulfillment, to reach the ideal way of life. And so the folks that come to college today are unfamiliar with these terms. These are the types of things that really we ought to be pointed toward. Isn't that right, Winston?
Well, I think we have an opportunity to seek the higher things, but we can also seek the higher values in the day-to-day world that we live in, so that when we say that, for instance, we have pride or free enterprise system, part of the reason we do is because it's a system that allows us to choose to do the right thing in our day-to-day work. So we bring our character, we bring our soul, we bring our generosity, we bring our trustworthiness to our day-to-day living, whether that be as parents, as workers, as business owners, as salespersons, again, as teachers. In all of these occupations, we bring our full humanity to those positions. That is the most important thing to remember, that while we do keep score, of course, in the free enterprise system, and normally that's done in terms of profit or salary, and that has a great validity to it, at the same time we have to keep score of our character. We becoming the kind of person we want to be as we do the things we have to do to provide for our families and ourselves. Those are questions that I think good men have to ask themselves. And this goes back to something you brought up earlier when we're talking about the governing in politics. The definition of self-government that we use today has translated into somehow democracy, the people choose. But historically in the country, the definition of self-government, first and foremost, led off with individuals who were capable of governing themselves. They were self-responsible. By being that kind of person, a self-governing, self-responsible person, a person of virtue and character, then the second half of the definition, hence, going forward, we can be a self-governing people. But it does not make sense to even assume that we can be a self-governing people, a functioning democratic republic, unless our citizens are self-governing. So if we want the nation to be more responsible in terms of managing its finances, we want to reduce the substantial debt that our country has, we want to stop running large deficits. Well, part of the challenge is, as citizens, are we doing the same thing? Are we living on mortgages that are too big for us? Are we spending more money than we earn? Are we not saving for the future? If we're not doing that as citizens, that may be part of the reason we're not doing it as a nation. So the more of us that can emphasize those characteristics and those values, look for them in our leadership, in our political leadership, our business leadership, our educational leadership, look for the kind of people who also seek out those values and try to live their life in that way. This affect the broader community in a way that really gives us the opportunity to create an American republic that we can be proud of.
Folks, I told you that we were going to have on one of the smartest guys walking the planet. We're talking with Winston Elliott here on the American Dream Radio Show. I'm Darrin Moore. I'm sitting in for Jay.